I never thought my own sister would betray me like this. But here I am, standing in the middle of her apartment, the apartment I now own because of her own greed. My name is Ethan, and for most of my life, I've been the kind of guy who tries to see the best in people, especially family. I'm a software developer, quiet, focused, always tinkering with ideas that no one else cared about. Until one day, I created an app that changed everything. The idea came to me during one of those long nights alone in my tiny apartment, staring at lines of code while the rest of the world slept. It was an app that could help small businesses manage their finances in a way that was both simple and revolutionary. I spent a year refining it, pouring my soul into every feature, every pixel, every function. When I finally launched it, I knew I had something special. My friends told me I was crazy to think it would ever amount to anything, but I believed in it. My sister Emily was the only one who truly believed in me, at least. That's what I thought. She was always the outgoing one, the one who could light up a room with her laugh. She had this ability to charm people, to make them trust her. And she always said she believed in me. So when she offered to help me promote the app, I was grateful. She had connections I didn't. She was the one who convinced me to let her pitch it to investors. To take it to the next level, she said, "Ethan, let me do this for you. I know how to sell an idea, and this one deserves to be seen." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe she had my back. So I let her take the lead, while I kept coding, kept refining. I thought we were a team, but then came the day that everything changed. I was sitting in our favorite coffee shop, waiting for Emily to show up. She was late. She was always late. But when she finally arrived, she had this strange, triumphant smile on her face. She sat across from me, her phone buzzing every few seconds. I asked her what was going on, and she just laughed. "Oh, Ethan," she said, "you wouldn't believe the day I've had." That's when she told me she'd presented the app as her own. She'd signed the contracts, secured the investors, and taken all the credit. She was sitting there, sipping her latte like she'd just won the lottery. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. My throat tightened, my hands shook. I felt like the walls were closing in around me, my own sister. She'd stolen everything. I walked out of that coffee shop in a daze, my mind reeling. I didn't know what to feel, first betrayal, rage, or heartbreak. All I knew was that everything I'd worked for had been taken from me by the person I trusted most. That's how this story begins, with a brother who believed in family and a sister who saw an opportunity. And in that betrayal, I found a fire I didn't know I had. After that day in the coffee shop, I couldn't sleep. My mind wouldn't stop replaying her words, her smug smile, the way she brushed off my questions like I was some clueless kid. I kept telling myself there had to be a mistake, that maybe I'd misunderstood her, but deep down, I knew. My sister had stolen my app, and with it my trust. I tried to confront her. I called her that night, my voice shaking as I demanded an explanation. She answered like nothing was wrong, her voice light and sweet, but there was an edge to it that I'd never noticed before. "Ethan, you're overreacting," she said. "I'm just helping you. You should be grateful. Grateful." The word cut through me like a knife. I hung up the phone and stared at the dark ceiling above my bed, feeling like the walls were closing in. For the first time in my life, I realized my sister was capable of things I never imagined. The next day, I forced myself to get up and go to work, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting to the app, to Emily, to all the hours I'd spent building something that wasn't mine anymore. I started to notice little things that didn't add up. Emails to potential investors had gone unanswered. The prototype links I'd shared with Emily were no longer mine. They redirected to her account. I'd always trusted her with everything, and she'd used that trust as a weapon. One night I found myself sitting at my desk, staring at the app's code on my screen. I thought about the hours I'd spent perfecting it, the late nights, the endless cups of coffee, the excitement I'd felt when it all finally worked. Now it felt like all of that had been stolen from me. I felt sick to my stomach. But there was one thing I still had, my gut instinct. Emily was hiding something, and I was going to find out what it was. I started digging. I went through old emails, contracts, anything I could find. I reached out to a few of the investors I'd spoken with months earlier, just to see if they knew what was going on. Most of them didn't respond, but one Dito woman named Claire, who had always been polite but distant. Her email was brief, almost cold. Emily presented the app as her own. The deal is done. That was all I needed to know. My sister had lied to everyone, told them the app was hers, taken the money, signed the contracts. She hadn't just stolen the app. She'd stolen my future. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. Every day I'd wake up and think, maybe it would all be a bad dream, but it never was. The worst part was how Emily acted like nothing had happened. She'd call me sometimes, acting like everything was normal, asking if I wanted to get lunch or see a movie. I wanted to scream at her, but I couldn't. I felt like I was trapped in this twisted game she was playing. One afternoon, I went to her apartment unannounced. She opened the door with that same bright smile, but I could see it. In her eyes, she knew what she'd done, and she didn't care. Her place was immaculate, full of expensive furniture I knew she couldn't afford on her own. I realized then that she'd already started spending the money she'd stolen from me. My money, Emily, I said, my voice low and tight. We need to talk. She laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. Oh, Ethan, always so serious. Let's have some wine and relax. But I couldn't relax. I was done pretending. I pressed her over and over, trying to get her to admit what she'd done. She just smiled and deflected, her voice dripping with false concern. Ethan, you're making such a big deal out of this. Why can't you just be happy for me? Happy? For her? My jaw tightened so hard, I thought I might crack a tooth. I left her apartment that day with my hands clenched into fists, my mind buzzing with fury. After that, I stopped answering her calls. I stopped pretending everything was okay. But I still didn't have any real proof, no paper trail, no smoking gun that would show the world what she'd done. All I had were my suspicions and a gut-deep certainty that my sister was a liar and a thief. Late at night, I'd sit at my computer, staring at the blinking cursor, trying to figure out what to do next. I was lost in this fog of betrayal and heartbreak, but underneath it all was a spark of something else's determination. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to find a way to expose her and take back what was mine. For now, though, all I had was anger, and that was enough to keep me going. I knew that if I wanted to stand a chance against Emily, I couldn't just rely on gut feelings or half-formed suspicions. I needed real evidence, something that no one could ignore or explain away. So I started digging deeper, spending every spare moment tracking her digital footprints. I started with the email. Threads. Late at night, while the rest of the world slept, I combed through old messages, invoices, and presentations she'd sent me. It was all there, her promises to help me promote the app, her ideas for launch events, her casual suggestions about investors she knew. On the surface, it all looked friendly and supportive, but the more I read, the more I realized just how carefully she'd woven her lies. One night I found it. Buried deep in an old email thread was a forwarded message she'd sent to an investor, my app's entire concept, described in her own words, with no mention of me at all. She'd even attached one of my prototype videos and signed it with her name. Reading it, I felt like my chest was going to cave in. I had proof that she'd stolen my work and claimed it as her own. But that was just the start. I knew Emily wouldn't leave a paper trail that obvious, so I turned to her social media. I felt like a stalker, scrolling through her. Carefully curated posts, photos of investor meetings, boozy dinners with executives, captions about how she was finally launching her dream project. The comments were full of congratulations and adoration, people praising her brilliance, her vision. Each word felt like a slap in the face. I started piecing together timelines, cross-referencing dates from her posts with emails I'd sent. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. She'd built her entire narrative around my work, and no one seemed to notice or care. It was infuriating, but it was also empowering. With every new piece of evidence, I felt that spark of determination burn brighter. Then I got lucky. I remembered that Emily had once asked me to share my Google Drive with her, saying it would be easier to keep everything in one place. I'd forgotten to revoke her access after she helped with the launch. One night I logged in and saw a folder she'd created, Investors' Final Presentations. My stomach twisted, opened it, and found dozens of files, financial projections, pitch decks, even contracts. All of them had my app's name plastered across the top, but her signature at the bottom, one file in particular, stopped me cold. It was a scanned copy of a contract she'd signed with a venture capital firm, MyApp, licensed exclusively to her, with her as the sole founder. My name was nowhere. I scrolled down and saw the payout numbers, the dates, the signatures. Was it? That was the smoking gun? I sat back in my chair, my hands shaking. It was real. It was all real. She'd taken everything. And she wasn't going to stop until she'd squeezed every last dollar out of my work. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, breathing hard, feeling that cold clarity settle over me. This was the moment when I stopped being just a victim. If Emily wanted a war, she was going to get one. The next day, I reached out to Claire, the investor who had given me that first cold, dismissive email. I forwarded her the contract, the emails, everything. I didn't ask for help, I demanded. You need to see the truth, I wrote. This is my app. She stole it. To my surprise, Claire responded within the hour. She was direct and professional, but there was a new tone in her message, concern, maybe even regret. I'll look into this, she wrote. Send me everything you have. I sent it all. It's every file, every email, every screenshot. I didn't hold anything back. And once I hit send, I felt lighter, like I'd finally taken the first real step toward taking back what was mine. But I knew I couldn't rely on just one investor's conscience. I needed a plan. So I started reaching out to people I trusted, colleagues, mentors, even a friend who was a lawyer. Quietly, carefully, I started building a case. I learned about intellectual property rights, about how to protect my code and my ideas. I started drafting statements, timelines, anything that could prove my ownership. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I felt like I was drowning in the details, like I was losing sight of why I'd started this in the first place. But every time I felt that doubt creep in. I'd remember her smile that day in the coffee shop, the smile of someone who thought she'd won, and I'd keep going. I didn't tell anyone else what I was doing. I didn't want to give Emily any hint that I was fighting back. In those weeks, I became a ghost in my own life, working my day job by day. And by night, turning into a detective, a strategist. I was done playing the clueless brother. I was done letting her write the story. One night as I was compiling yet another file, I caught my reflection in the dark window. My face looked different, told her harder, but there was something else there too. A spark, a promise. I was going to take back everything she'd stolen from me. When the time came, I wouldn't just expose her lies. I'd make sure she faced the consequences. This was no longer just about an app or money. It was about showing her and everyone else who I really was. The day I decided to confront Emily for good. I woke up feeling like I'd finally come up for air after months underwater. My hands were steady as I gathered the evidence I'd collected, the contracts, the emails, the screenshots. I could feel the weight of it all in my briefcase off. Silent testament to everything she'd done. I didn't tell her I was coming. I wanted to see her face when she realized I wasn't backing down. I showed up at her apartment in the late afternoon. The summer sun was still strong, but there was a coldness in my chest that wouldn't go away. She answered the door with that same bright smile, the one that had fooled me for so long. "Ethan," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "This is a surprise. Come in." I stepped inside, my heart pounding. Her apartment was even more lavish than the last time I'd seen it. Plush rugs, designer furniture, the faint scent of expensive perfume. She poured us both a glass of wine, like it was just another evening. But as she handed me the glass, I set it down without taking a sip. "Emily," I said quietly, We need to talk. Her smile didn't waver. Of course, Ethan. What's on your mind? I pulled the briefcase onto the table and opened it slowly, letting the papers fan out in front of her. Her smile faltered as she saw the stack of documents my app's code, the signed contracts, the email chains where she'd presented it as her own. What is this? She said, her voice tight. You know exactly what this is, I said. The voice was low, but I could feel the heat in it, the anger I'd kept buried for too long. It's everything you stole from me. It's everything I'm going to use to take it all back. She laughed, then a short, brittle sound that didn't reach her eyes. Ethan, you're being ridiculous. You don't know what you're talking about. I leaned forward, my hands on the table. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Emily. I've already sent this to the investors. Claire knows the truth. And soon, everyone else will too. Her face went pale. You went to Claire? She whispered. I nodded. She's seen the contracts. She's seen the emails. She knows it's my app, not yours. And she's willing to back me up. Emily's eyes darted to the door like she was looking for a way out. You're ruining everything, Ethan. You're going to destroy all the progress I've made. The progress you made? Said my voice rising. You mean the progress you stole? This was never yours, Emily. It was mine, and you don't get to take it from me. For a moment, she looked like she might argue, but then her shoulders sagged. She slumped into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Ethan, you don't understand, she said, her voice muffled. I needed this. I needed to be someone. I felt a flicker of something pity, maybe, but I shoved it away. You could have been someone without taking what was mine, I said. But you chose to lie, and now you're going to pay for it. She looked up at me then, her eyes wet with unshed tears. What are you going to do? She asked, her voice small. I took a deep breath. I'm suing you, Emily, I said, for intellectual property theft, for fraud, for everything. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. Words hung in the air between us, heavy and final. She didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her eyes wide with shock and something else, fear. I've already talked to a lawyer, I continued. I've got everything I need. Can try to fight it, but you know as well as I do that you'll lose. She closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. Please, Ethan, she whispered. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I shook my head. It went this far the moment you signed your name on those contracts. Decided that your ambition was worth more than your brother's trust. For a moment, there was only silence. I felt the weight of everything between us, years of shared laughter, of secrets whispered in the dark, of memories that now felt like they belonged to someone else. Then I turned and walked out of her apartment, the door closing softly behind me. My hands were still shaking, but I felt something else too, a calm certainty that I hadn't felt in months. I wasn't her victim anymore. I was the one in control. The next day I filed the lawsuit. My lawyer moved quickly, sending her a formal notice and starting the process to freeze her assets. Word spread fast. Claire reached out to the other investors, and within days, Emily was fielding calls she couldn't ignore. She tried to spin it, of course tried to tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. But the proof was undeniable. The contracts didn't lie. When I walked out of the courthouse after the first hearing, the sun was warm on my face, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I breathed easy. Emily had always been the one who could charm her way out of anything. But charm wasn't enough to cover the truth. I still felt the sting of betrayal every time I thought about her. But I also felt something else, relief. I'd taken back what was mine, and I wasn't done yet. She'd tried to bury me under her lies, but I'd risen from the wreckage, stronger and sharper than I'd ever been. This was my story. I was taking it back one hard-fought step at a time. In the days after the lawsuit was filed, everything changed. Emily's bright, confident world started to crack. The investors who'd once toasted her at fancy dinners were now demanding answers. Some called me directly, apologizing for not seeing the truth sooner. Others pulled their funding immediately. Refusing to be associated with a fraud, Emily tried to keep up the act, at first posting on social media like nothing was wrong, insisting she was still the face of the project. But the evidence I'd given them was too strong. Screenshots of emails, contracts with her signature, proof that the app was mine from the start. One by one, her supporters fell silent, and the walls she'd built around her story came crashing down. I watched it all unfold with a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. She'd done this to herself, but it still hurt to see my sister, my own blood, caught in the collapse of her own lies. Part of me wanted to reach out to tell her I still cared, but I couldn't. Some lines once crossed can't be redrawn. As the legal process moved forward, Emily's assets were frozen. Her name was tarnished in the tech world, her reputation reduced to whispers of deceit and betrayal. She stopped calling me. She stopped trying to spin the narrative. In the end, she seemed to accept that she'd lost. For me, the victory was bittersweet. I won the case. The app was legally mine again, along with the profits she'd stolen. Court even granted me ownership of her apartment collateral she'd put up to secure those shady deals. When I walked through the front door of that place for the first time as its rightful owner, I felt a rush of vindication and a wave of sadness all at once. Standing in that apartment, surrounded by the echoes of her ambition, I realized just how deep her betrayal had cut. But I also realized something else: I wasn't her victim anymore. I was done letting her choices define me. In the quiet of those final days, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The anger I'd carried for so long began to fade, leaving something softer in its place: acceptance. I knew there would always be scars from what she'd done, but I also knew they didn't have to hold me back. I had my work, my future, and the knowledge that I'd stood up for myself when it mattered most. Emily's story ended with a shattered reputation and a lost home. Mine was just beginning, shaped by the lessons I'd learned and the fire I'd found in myself. And as I stepped out of her apartment that day, the door closing behind me, I felt a quiet certainty that no matter how much she'd tried to steal from me, she could never take away who I was. In the weeks that followed, I felt like I was finally coming back to life. The lawsuit was behind me, the app was mine again, and Emily's lies were exposed for everyone to see. More than that, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I moved into the apartment I'd won in court. At first, it felt strange, almost surreal, to be living in the space that had once been hers. The walls still echoed with the traces of her ambition-faded posters from the pitch meetings she'd bragged about. Wine glasses lined up on the kitchen counter like trophies. But as I unpacked my own boxes and set up my own workstations, it stopped feeling like hers and started feeling like mine. I didn't decorate the place with expensive furniture or flashy gadgets. Instead, I filled it with things that felt real and honest: books I loved, plants that brought a little green into the sterile corners, photos of the friends who'd stood by me when everything fell apart. Every morning, I woke up and felt a little stronger, a little freer. My work had become my refuge again, not a battlefield. The app was finally back in my hands, and I poured myself into it with a sense of purpose that burned brighter than ever. With Emily out of the picture, I was free to refine it, to build on the foundation I'd created without the weight of her lies. I found new partners, people who respected my work and saw the vision I'd always believed in. Together, we launched the app under my name, the name it should have carried from the start. Seeing it live again, with users finding real value in what I'd built, was the sweetest vindication. Every new feature, every positive review, was a reminder that the work I'd done wasn't just about code or profit. It was about me, my determination, my belief that I could create something meaningful. Of course, there were still moments. When the past crept in, I'd think about Emily sometimes, wonder where she'd gone, or how she was coping with the consequences of her choices. Part of me still missed the sister. I thought I knew the one who used to make me laugh, who told me she believed in me. I knew I couldn't let those memories define me anymore. I'd learned the hard way that trust is precious. Not everyone deserves it. I also learned that standing up for yourself doesn't make you ruthless, it makes you strong. I'd spent so long thinking of myself as the quiet one, the dreamer who needed someone like Emily to help him be seen. But in fighting for what was mine, I found a voice I didn't know I had. Some nights, I'd sit at my desk, watching the city lights through the window, and feeling that quiet hum of contentment in my chest. I'd think about how far I'd come from. The kid who just wanted to build something real to the man who wouldn't let anyone steal that dream away. I knew the scars from what Emily had done would never fully fade, but they didn't hurt the way they used to. They were reminders of my strength. In the end, that's what mattered most. My work was my own again. My future was my own. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize now that betrayal isn't just about losing something you worked for. It's about losing a piece of yourself. For a long time, I thought Emily's lies had stolen my future, my confidence, even my identity. But I see now that what she really did was force me to find the strength I'd been too afraid to see. I used to think loyalty meant standing by the people you love, no matter what. But loyalty without respect isn't loyalty, it's surrender. And in the end, Emily's betrayal taught me that real strength isn't about never being hurt. It's about how you rise from that hurt, how you reclaim what was taken from you, and how you refuse to let it break you. I've learned that justice isn't always swift or clean, but it's worth fighting for. That speaking up for yourself, even when your voice shakes, is the truest act of courage. And that no matter how charming someone might be, no matter how much you love them, your dreams are yours to protect. No one else will guard them as fiercely. As you do, the app I built was more than just a tool, was a part of my story. And taking it back wasn't just about proving Emily wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could stand on my own, that I could be the author of my own life. I don't know where Emily's path will lead her now, or if she'll ever understand the damage she caused. I've let go of the hope that she might apologize or make things right. Some wounds you heal from, but you never forget. And that's okay. The scars are reminders of the fire I found when everything fell apart. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, it's this. Never let anyone else's ambition dim your light. Never let someone else's betrayal define who you are. Stand your ground, even when it's hard. Fight for what's yours, even when you're scared. Because the only person who truly knows your worth is you, and in the quiet moments, when you're left alone with the echoes of the past, remember, you're stronger than you think.